Come on, seriously, bro. Hello, hello, hello. Top of the morning, evening, afternoon, and good night to one and all. It is Thursday, February 13th. Tomorrow is Valentine's Day. Who's getting it? Yeah, on Valentine's Day. Oh, shit. Oh, yes, yes. Today. Oh, thank you so much. Who is that? Let me open up this chat over here. Thank you so much, Jordan. I have a fun topic for today, something that we don't typically speak about here because, well, thank you. Follow up in a second. What's up, Martin? Uh, uh, it, Thank you, Monkey. Thank you so much. I have a really fun topic today, and I know the title is throwing you off, but I think it's really, really important. Thank you, Maddie. I think it's important because this is going to offend some people, and that's kind of what I do here, right? There's some things that I'm going to say that I'm going to piss off the left, the right, or somewhere down the middle. And it's just because I have a lot of opinions, and some of them are fantastic opinions, and most people will agree with them, while other opinions are not so popular and nobody really cares to hear them. Well, I think today these two things go hand in hand. Why do they go hand in hand? Fourth dimension and sperm. They go hand in hand because it's science. It's mere science. Then again, everything that we experience throughout our life is science. Yes? You having running water is science. You having be able to cook food is science. Everything somehow or another is related to science. So before we get into it, I feel like it is absolutely a necessity for me to play you a clip. Now, some of you have probably already seen this clip, but for those of you that don't know what a fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh dimension is, I want to explain it to you. But I'm not going to explain it to you because I'm not going to be able to explain it to you the way that this individual is going to be able to explain it to you. So let's just open this up. Let's just jump right into it. Oh, thank you, David. Thank you for that so much. Let's jump right into it. Let me play this clip for you.
Imagine that this folder is a dimensional plane. Now, assuming that it is no height and no depth, what would this mean? It would mean that it's a one-dimensional world. So if, hypothetically, an organism was living inside of it, it would only be able to move in a linear path forward and backwards in a straight line. Now, if we go to the second dimension, we have two dimensions. We have width and we have length. So hypothetically, if an organism lived inside of here, then it would be able to move up, down, left, right, and anywhere else in between.
Now, before I get this, I've already seen this video. Has anybody not seen this video about 10 to 13? Actually, let me scroll down and see. 15, 15 years. Okay. Uh, who has not seen this video? Let me get an H2 if you have not, H1 if you have. Because if more people have seen it, I'll just move into the next part of this. If people H2 have not seen it, okay, so there's a lot of people that have not seen it. Okay, so let me let me play it then. Okay, so yeah, okay, let me play this. So this guy, he's brilliant. He's gonna explain to you the fourth dimension and the fifth and the sixth and the seventh. You'll get it.
And a two-dimensional world is comprised of an infinite series of one-dimensional worlds stacked upon each other. Just as our three-dimensional world, which has depth and length and height, is comprised of an infinite series of two-dimensional worlds. So, now that I have stacked many folders upon each other, we have three dimensions. We have depth, we have length, and we have width. Now what happens if you keep going on from here on out? We would have a four-dimensional world, but what exactly is a fourth dimension? In order to understand this, we need to understand how dimensions are perceived. We live in the three-dimensional world, but despite that, we actually view things to be two-dimensionally. Take a perfect sphere, for example. If you're looking at a sphere, it looks just like a regular two-dimensional circle. The only way that you can tell it's an actual sphere instead of a circle is because of the hues of light on it. So just like in a two-dimensional world, if a organism in the two-dimensional world was looking upon a circle, the light would make it appear to be lighter at one end and darker in the middle. Also, If an object is moving closer and farther away from you, you don't actually perceive that it's getting closer and farther away. You see that it's getting smaller or larger, and then you assume that it's getting either farther away or closer. But let's say that an object was to grow in perfect equilibrium, so that it was growing at the same speed that it was shrinking as you move it farther away. Then you would not be able to tell, without any lights or if there were details on the object, that it's moving or growing at all. You may have assumed that since we perceive things to be in 2 dimensions, that a 2-dimensional organism would see in 1 dimension. So, as we're watching this rubber band expand as it moves farther away from this little organism in the 2-dimensional world, it does not actually perceive anything is happening to it because it's growing at the same speed that it's moving farther away. But since we can actually see it from the 3-dimensional world and perceive things to be in 2 dimensions, we can see things for how they actually are. The reason that the 2-dimensional organism doesn't see things the way they really are is because the 2-dimensional organism sees things in 1 dimension, just how we, 3-dimensional creatures, see things in 2 dimensions. So in a way, we don't really see our world the way it truly is. A 4-dimensional creature, however, seeing our 3-dimensional world in 3 dimensions, would be able to see through things. Would be able to see absolutely everything, just as we could see if there was several organisms spread along a 2D environment on your floor. You would be able to see inside houses. You would be able to see inside of people. So if a 2-dimensional world, a flat surface, is just made of an infinite amount of lines, then the 3D world is just made out of an infinite amount of planes. So the 4D world, logically, is made out of an infinite amount of 3D objects. Though they're not just put together like you would like building blocks. That's not how the 4D world is. That would just be 3D again. So in order to understand this, we need to understand the logical progression of mathematics in our world. Imagine that this connects piece represents the first dimension. It's simply a straight line, which is basically what the first dimension looks like. And if you add 3 more of these straight lines and connect them so that adjacent sides are perpendicular and opposite sides are parallel, then you have the basic shape of the second dimension. You have a square. Now if you keep going from here and you add it so that there's a total of 4 squares, and all adjacent sides are perpendicular, and all opposite sides are parallel, then you end up with, obviously, a cube. So, if you tried to keep going from here, and you would have a 4-dimensional basic shape, you would have what's called a tesseract. Now, I cannot show you a tesseract, but you need to understand that it's basically 4 cubes that are within each other that have all adjacent sides perpendicular and all opposite sides parallel. Yet there are 4 lines connecting to each vertex. So a tesseract would look somewhat like this picture. Now that's not exactly what it looks like because this is a 2-dimensional depiction, and obviously not all of the lines are straight. So I cannot show you what a tesseract actually looks like because we cannot perceive things in the 3rd dimension. You cannot even imagine what a tesseract looks like. You cannot physically.
I think big this part here. They talk about this in Cube Zero that the you I mean, he's going to explain it more, but it's not something that we can physically imagine because what we see is what we believe. And I don't want to interrupt him. I'll let him keep going.
Physically, you cannot in your mind picture the 4th dimension or a 4th dimensional shape. And you can keep going on from the 4th dimension even. You can go to the 5th dimension, the 6th dimension, the 71st dimension. It doesn't matter. Theoretically, there are an infinite amount of spatial dimensions. A common misconception of the 4th dimension is that the 4th dimension is time. Now, while some argue that by going forward and backwards in time, if you move forward the same distance and backwards the same, then you would end up in the same place you started, just like in the 4th dimension. And while that may seem logical, if you think about it, it really doesn't make sense. If you imply that the 4th dimension is actually time, well, first of all, time is not spatial. There's a difference between space and time, quite obviously. And assuming that all dimensions are according to a pattern, then that doesn't really make sense either, because saying the fourth dimension is time, every dimension has time in it. So that would mean that the fourth dimension is special in some way, which doesn't really make any sense. Another reason this doesn't make sense is that we very, very, very slightly travel through time whenever we move due to the distance that light takes to get to our body. Now, if a group of astronauts were to get in a spaceship and they were to go very, very, very close to the speed of light, then they would, and they went around in this impossible, nearly the speed of light spaceship for a few months, and then afterwards they returned to Earth. They would find that Earth had actually progressed a few years, so they had moved forward in time by moving that quickly. Another interesting concept involving the fourth dimension is that many physicists and even mathematicians may say that the dimensions are very, very slightly curved, because if you really think about it, nothing can be truly, absolutely infinite. So imagine that the first dimension, the line, is just very, very slightly curved, so that after a very long time, it will end up creating a circle. So, as suggested by many physicists, if you keep going in the same direction, then you will end up where you are, where you started after a very, very long amount of time, obviously. And the same thing would happen to the second dimension. If it's just a square, and then you extend it very, very slightly in a curve, then it will eventually make a sphere, and the same thing happens in our dimension, except it will form a very, very slightly curved third dimension, which will form a four-dimensional universe, basically. So what this kind of means is that our three-dimensional world is within a four-dimensional world, and the four-dimensional world is within a fifth-dimensional world, and so on. Now, I did say that nothing can be truly infinite, but if this is true, and a dimension is really within another dimension, within another dimension, within another dimension, then I'm implying that there's an infinite amount of dimensions, which is the only problem I really have with this theory. I'm not sure if it ever stops, or if infinity is really even possible. We don't know that. Thanks for watching my video, and I hope this gave you a better idea of what the fourth dimension is.
So, the reason why I'm starting off this with the next video, you're going to say, how are they related? Well, they're science. This is theory. Well, most science is theories, although some of it is factual. They base off of theories, and that's the closest you're going to get to actual factual is theories. So this is a theory. The kid's not a scientist. He has gone on to do nothing to do with science, actually. And I think it's important because we've went from this 15 years ago to now this. And let me just play this little 2-minute clip. I'm sorry if I interrupt in the middle of this because I have not seen this, but I already know where this is going, and I have a lot of opinions based off of this. And this is why I feel that science, let me say this, I feel that science can try to explain a lot of the things that have happened. I don't have a problem with that. I really don't have a problem with science pushing forward and teaching us more things, but what I do have a problem with is when science tries to get involved with the creation of human beings. That's where I'm not a big fan. I'm not saying that I'm against it. I just think that if you are designed a certain way, you can figure out why you're designed that way, but not a way for you to be fixed. Does that make sense? Well, I'm not talking about medicine to get you better. I'm not talking about chemotherapy or radiation to fix a disease. What we're talking about is creating life, not fixing life. I just want to be clear there. Okay, so here we go. That's how those two correlate. One is science, and it's very easily, he makes it easy to understand. This.
One of the main causes of infertility in men is sometimes called low sperm motility, a condition where the sperm is healthy but unable to swim effectively to make it to an egg. For couples who struggle to have a baby, the male partner plays a role in the infertility about 40% of the time, according to the American Society for Reproductive Medicine. Techniques like artificial insemination or in vitro fertilization can help, but they tend to be not very reliable or complex and expensive. Now scientists from the Institute for Integrative Nanosciences at IFW Dresden have come up with a possible solution to help sperm swim more quickly and effectively.
We've essentially made sperm that cannot make it to the egg have a torpedo attachment. Okay, let's just keep going. I have a lot of opinions about this.
The sperm bot, as the scientists call their invention, is a miniature metal helix just large enough to wrap around the tail of a single sperm.
Little metal helix. Metal. You guys ever like drill a hole to put a screw into something? You know those little shimmies that get stuck in the drill bit? Basically that little scrap of metal you come up, or if you put a screw in wood, you'll see some of that with wood. Your scrap metal, that's what we're going to put around sperm.
And propel it towards an egg for potential fertilization. Once the sperm has entered the egg, the metal casing can reverse direction to slip off. The bots are remote controlled by the scientists with the help of a magnetic field.
Okay, let's stop right there. I don't know about you. The animation that they showed of that sperm guy getting there was nice. It was really nice. He looked fluid. He had good movement. His tail was a little off whack, right? You saw that. Let me play that again for you. He had a lot of, I get it. It's made with Blender.
Just large enough to wrap around the tail of a single sperm and propel.
He just looks fluid, right? Just needs a little bit of guidance, like a human being with a crutch or a cane.
It towards an egg for potential fertilization. Once the sperm has entered the egg, the metal casing can reverse direction.
I don't know how we're not going to talk about the metal casing, like how a woman has just metal inside of her uterus and fallopian tubes. But whatever. Let's just move past that. Like pretend like they didn't say metal. Take a look at this next sperm guy, the actual one that has it on him.
To slip off. The bots are remote controlled by the scientists with the help of a magnetic.
Now take a look at that guy, right? Obviously, well, let's assume that this is real sperm, right? These are real sperms. These are human being sperms. What makes you think that that sperm that can't make it to that egg actually needs assistance getting there, right? When we have these low, so to speak, that's what we're going to call them, a bunch of sperms in a shot. We're not talking about 10 or 20. We're talking about millions, man. Millions. So if you're watching this right now, you're a winner, right? You won the most important race of your life. You won first place. Now, let's take a step back. You don't need participation trophies through life, right? You have the first place prize, and it's you. Where I start to have a bit of a discrepancy here is when you see some of the people that have won first place prizes. They wouldn't even get a participation trophy in some of the sports today. That being said, do we really need to now implement metal shavings? That's what I'm going with, because the sperms are small, right? When you're looking at this, you're thinking of like a screw. You don't understand. That's like super magnified, okay? This is tiny. You don't think anything is wrong with that sperm? If a man is infertile or his sperm is healthy, but it doesn't make it, to me, that's not healthy. To me, that's God saying, no, there's a lot of reasons why I don't want your sperm to make it. One, they're going to turn out all bad. And if you have people, this is going to sound mean, if you have people that make it, that are number one, that earn, let's say have Down syndrome, let's say have, I don't know, some type of thing that is abnormal. Can you imagine what the last guy, the last one, the last sperm, what they would have become? Right? There's a good argument there. And now you want to give all of them a boost?
Magnetic field. So far, the scientists have only tested the sperm bot on bull sperm and in a petri dish. Their lab testing showed that the robotic motors can be directed to slip around a sperm, drive it to an egg, and then release it. But the team
What happens if it rips its tail off? Well, I guess it doesn't need its tail anymore. What happens if it goes on and it lops off half the head of the sperm? The sperm goes in half-ass sideways, right? Tail goes in first. Now you got a fucked up sperm. That baby's gonna come out, have no eyes, 3 fingers, 16 toes, 1 kneecap, and a vagina, right? Like it's liver not needed. So what happens if it decapitates a couple sperms? Like, it's one thing you're going in with a big ass turkey baster and you're like, you know what? We got this. I know how to do this. I've done this a couple of times. It's another thing when you start taking scrap metal and you're like, let's make mini torpedoes. Did the Japanese say this? Let's make mini torpedoes to help adjust. This is what I'm saying with science, right? You saw the first video that I showed you, and it is informative. It's nice. It's telling you, hey man, this is what the 4th dimension is. And then you have this side of the spectrum of science where they're like, if you think in vitro is scientific, and if you think that all these things that we could do to make you unfertile or more fertile, what we're going to do now is we're going to take whatever sperm you already have that you can argue. Listen, you can argue and say that they're healthy all damn day. You don't need to be a scientist to know that they're not healthy. Because if they were healthy, right? Like, I don't go to the doctor when I feel good, I'm feeling nice. We go to the doctor when we're bad, we're feeling bad. So if you go to a doctor and you're like, you know what, I feel good, but all of a sudden I got this cramp, you're not healthy. So if a sperm can't make it on its own and it needs assistance, I mean, it's not healthy by definition. Healthy to me means that you can function by yourself, right? We could get into this whole debacle of abortion, the whole thing, but we're not going to, because we're talking about prior to that egg even being fertilized. We're now implementing ways. This is what I say. Here's my advice for any women out there that their husband, their sperm are healthy, but they're weak. Here's my advice. Find a new man. That's my best advice. Is not to use the man that you have. You don't want his sperms. You don't want them because they're weak. They're not healthy. You can't be healthy and weak. You can be healthy and strong. You could be weak and sick, but healthy and weak, that doesn't make any sense to me. And if they're going to try to justify this in any type of way, to us, essentially, you are playing God. You are now adjusting things to work because they wouldn't work otherwise without human intervention. All right, let me just go back to this.
says there is still a long way until they can show actual fertilization of an egg with the help of the sperm bot. Next, they want to refine the ability of the helix to capture and deliver sperm. The team is not planning human trials in the near future, but if someday they can successfully replicate their lab results inside the human body, artificially motorized sperm could be a new option for.
Let's take a look. Let's go backwards real quick. Let's go backwards real quick. Take a look at that sperm. That is a great example. He can't even find the fucking egg, right? Like it is right next to him. And he's got the little torpedo gem on there, and he still can't find it, right? Like it is
fully replicate their lab results.
It's right next to you, bro. Like it is literally 2 degrees to your left. Just hit a sharp left turn, and you're in. Watch him. Just watch him.
Inside the human body, artificially motorized.
He's going away from it. He doesn't even know what that is. He doesn't know. Does he deserve to get a piece of that pie? If you don't know what you're getting yourself into and you're not willing to jump into it and at least take a poke, right? You don't deserve to be here. This is a great example. You could see him. He is clearly lost. And you know what's even worse is there's someone guiding him with a magnet that can see the egg and is still missing the egg. That's like the blind leading the blind. You know where you need to go? Yeah, I need to not follow you, right? So if you can't find it by yourself, fine, check. You get assistance from someone that can look through a magnifying glass or whatever, an arthroscope or whatever. They can look in there and see and help, but they can't even guide you in the right direction. Yeah, that's not designed to be born. I'm just, you you got two people where, you know what you need to do? You need to have two of whatever is providing sperm and just see what gets there first. Just, take a poke.
Body, artificially motorized sperm could be a new option for infertility couples.
This is why we need to step away from science, people. You have, you're creating a world where you want everything to be in a perfect scenario. If it was supposed to be a perfect scenario, it would have been made that way.